Welcome, everyone. I'm Blair Clark, and today on the show, I am interviewing Andy Kata, an attorney who helps real estate investors and others set up an estate plan and protect their assets and investments. He's also a real estate investor himself, and during the interview, he does a very interesting deep dive on his small multifamily and large multifamily investments. Some of the golden nuggets, the pieces of wisdom I want you to take away from this interview today is Andy talks about how anybody, whether you're an attorney or another type of entrepreneur, whether you have a family or a single person, if you focus on these three core pillars of education, networking, and research, no matter where you are in your life, you can make real estate investing a reality for you. So, without further delay, let's get into the show because it's going to be a good one. Welcome, everyone. With me today, I have Mr. Andy Kata. Andy, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Blair. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Andy is a member of our networking group. If you're watching this on YouTube, check us out on Facebook, Michigan Real Estate Investor Network. Andy is an attorney, but he is also a real estate investor. So we're going to talk to him about both sides of that coin today. But before we dive into that, Andy, I just want you to introduce yourself to everybody. Just let us know what it is that you do for a living as an attorney, and then, where are you in the Southeast Michigan area?
Yeah, so I'm Andy Kata. I am an estate planning attorney. I run Kata Law PLLC. Solo practice. I'm the only staff there. So if you're working with me, you get me for better or for worse. And yeah, I've been an attorney now here in Michigan I've only been an attorney in Michigan, but it'll be 14 years in November. Before I did the estate planning, I worked for a big personal injury law firm for a little bit over a decade. And I did their Social Security disability appeals and did some estate planning on the side. And then a couple of years ago, decided that I was burnt out from the Social Security disability, and I wanted to focus on a practice that was more less conflict, more where I could help people, and people wanted to come to me because they wanted to work with me, not because they were in a really terrible position. So I transitioned to the estate planning, opened up my own practice. It's been almost about a year and a half now, and I'm in Harrison Township, Michigan. I work virtually though, so I can serve clients all over the state.
Gotcha. Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, I've seen you roundabout on the social media sphere anyway. The reason why I wanted to interview Andy is because I've been watching this guy give a lot of public speaking presentations lately. So I reached out to Andy and said, "Hey, can we interview you and just hear what it is that you have to say?" So tell us about that. What was your motivation to go to different events? Do you do things only in person? Do you do virtual events as well? Just tell us about that whole thing.
Sure. I started off doing some webinars. I promoted them through Facebook and my BNI group and just, friends and family trying to get the word out. And those are great. The turnout was okay. And then I thought, why don't we try something in person? And the in-person events, there's been, quite a few now. I have a better response to those. It's just building rapport, being in front of someone face to face, and they can see you, not through the computer screen. I know there's a lot of value to the virtual aspect of things, but estate planning really is it's all about educating, because you hear so many horror stories with estate planning, things gone wrong, people tied up in probate court for years. And a lot of that's because they don't know where to start with estate planning. They're not sure what type of planning they need. They know they need something, but they don't know if they need a will or a trust or both, or if there's just so much uncertainty. So people, I find that they just don't do anything because they don't have that certainty. So being able to educate my community, tell them, these are your options. This is what a will does. This is what a trust does. This is what you should do if you own real estate. That gives me an opportunity to, give back, to educate. And then people, if they want to work with me, they can. They have a good idea coming into our meeting, what they may want to do with their estate plan. So, I never in a million years thought I'd be out there educating on estate planning. Like I said, I was a W-2 employee for a long time. I just went to work, clocked in, clocked out. But yeah, I wouldn't trade it for the world. It's really rewarding to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. The same. When I go out and I educate about real estate investing, it's a good feeling. What do you think like the top one, two, three questions it is that people ask you during those presentations?
Oh yeah. So number one is, what do I need? Where do I start? Um,
Mhm.
those are well, like I said, it's one and two. What do I need? Where do I start? Those are the two big ones. There's a lot of uncertainty about, what a will versus a trust does. People think if they have a will that it's going to avoid probate court, but that's not the case. A will sends you to probate court. It's really just a letter to the judge telling how you want your assets distributed, and if you have minor children, who you'd want to take care of those kids, if you're not able to. So though, like I said, there's just so much uncertainty. People will Google estate planning and they get, 10 million results with 10 million answers, and they just don't know what to do. So I like to be able to just educate. So like, here's the will, here's the trust, here's what these other documents do, powers of attorney. There's asset protection trust for, real estate investors. Those are really handy for them if they want to, have some more security with their real estate. If you need long-term planning, there's Medicaid asset protection trust. So there's just so many tools out there, and people just really don't know what they do or that they're even available.
Yeah, these are questions that I had when we first got started as well, and I think maybe my biggest question, maybe just due to insecurity, was can I should I start planning? So as a real estate investor, should I start planning once I buy the first house? Should I wait until I accumulate 10? One doesn't seem like that big of a deal. So let's go down that question of when should I get started from the perspective of someone who is just getting started in real estate investing.
Yeah, so I always tell people the best time to, it's the same like real or in any investing model is the best time to start was yesterday. So yeah,
Okay.
if you have anything that you care about, that you love, that you want to make sure it ends up where you want it to end up, you should have some kind of plan in place. Not everybody estate planning is kind of like risk management for me. It's there's a
Mm,
lot of different ways to do it. How comfortable are you with doing it the way you're doing it? Some people say, well, I can do everything with beneficiary designations, and I'll do a ladybird deed for my home or my investment property. But sometimes that's not the best way to do it. You don't have a ton of control over that if one of your beneficiaries dies, or you want to change it and you forget to. There's so much, it's too rigid. If you have, a trust, for example, there's a lot of contingencies that you can plan for with those trusts. So if person A dies, then person B can receive it, or it can go to person C. So that's it's just a risk management thing, I think, is how I look at it.
okay. What are some mistakes that you see people in the real estate space making, with regards to protecting or not protecting, or like you just said, it goes to A and then it goes to B, and people don't really have their ducks in a row.
Yeah, I think, like I said, going back to the risk management side of things, you want to protect yourself from as much liability as you can. So, ideally, you're going to own those rental properties in an LLC. You can
Mhm.
put those LLCs into a revocable living trust, which will avoid probate so that the property's not going through the probate process. If you want to go a step further than that, there's asset protection trusts that you can put those properties in, or those LLCs in, and that makes it even harder for somebody if something happens in your personal life and you're being sued because you were in a car accident, and they hire Mike Morris and they sue you for the accident. Well, now you have this property in this asset protection trust, and that just makes it even harder for them to reach that asset. So um, I guess one of the biggest mistakes I see is just not doing anything, owning it in your own name. I would
Mm-hmm.
definitely advise against doing that. Some people say, well, I have enough insurance, I have an umbrella policy, and that can work in some instances, but the more you can protect it, the more you can protect yourself from liability. I think that's a huge advantage for being a real estate investor.
Okay. Well, let's unpack what it is specifically that you would recommend. So we can just use my own case study as an example. So I have a couple of rental properties. I have my own personal property. And then I also hold a few houses just short term while we're renovating and flipping them. So if I were to come into your office and say, I do hold my investments in an LLC, I have my personal, obviously my personal name, but I really don't have anything protected outside of insurance. What should I do? What would you recommend?
Yeah, so for the personal residence, I recommend having the trust own that, or um, yeah, I'd recommend having the trust own the personal residence. If you have the LLCs, we can assign those LLC interests to your revocable living trust. But some people want to go further. They want to have, really solid asset protection, and that's when you can do an asset protection trust. It's a little bit different than a revocable living trust. You still can have access to, the property, but it's in more of like a irrevocable trust, kind of like a light version of that, not one where you don't have any control over it, but it makes it harder, like I said, if there's something happening in your personal life and somebody's trying to come after your assets, that really will, attorneys see, oh, this property's in a trust. We don't want to have to go through the litigating and the expense of doing that. So we'll just, they'll settle for what the insurance policies are, have available as far as funds. Short-term rental or the short-term flips, I haven't really dealt with those, so that's not something that I would be able to advise you on right now, but it's definitely something for me to think about. But yeah, really, it's about, like I said, protecting things. You want to make sure you're, in my opinion, avoiding the probate process, because that's time consuming. It's costly. Generally, when you go through probate, it's going to take about a year to get the assets to where you want them to go, and it can cost you 5 to 10% of your net worth or your estate. So that's money that comes out of in
Mhm.
your children's pockets or your heirs' pockets.
Yeah, when I think about the short-term hold of a renovation and flip, sometimes you only have that property for a few months, and I
Right.
just don't know what the hoops are that a person has to jump through. So if you have this type of asset protection in place and then you want to sell the building, so for a rental property that maybe you're going to own for 10 plus years, what would people need to do when they're ready to sell that property? But then, for a fix and flip, it is maybe part of the reason why that hasn't come across your table is because it's just such a short-term hold. Or are there a bunch of hoops people have to jump through when they go to sell something that's in a trust?
Not really. It's, you're dealing with the title company, and you're the trustee of the revocable living trust, so you can sell property, put property in the trust. It's really just, doing the deed work and title, making sure you have the deeds done properly to sell something out of. Some mortgage companies want you to take the house out of the trust and then sell it as, your person in your personal name. Some let you do it as trustee. So it really depends on what, title and mortgage companies you're working with. And I think for like for the short term, the flips, a lot of times people just may not want to deal with, having to retitle it and take it out if their mortgage or title company requires them to do that. So you're only, holding it for that short period of time. Like I said, it's a risk management. It's, how worried are you that something's going to happen and this property
Mhm.
could be exposed to creditors or, things like that.
Okay. Let's say that you were a limited partner in like a larger multifamily deal, whether it was a syndication or a fund. Is that anything that a limited partner would think of, or is that something that the general partner, the people that are controlling the property, would that be for them?
It can be for both. So
Okay.
as, the general partner, I would recommend that they have something in their offering memorandum, or the private placement memorandum, excuse me, that allows their limited partners to transfer their interest into a revocable living trust so that it's protected. And if you're an LP, that's a question you may want to ask the general partners. Can I transfer my interest in there? Because a lot of, even with like regular LLC operating agreements, a lot of times it's silent. If it's a partnership, if you have more than one member in that, you want to make sure that I recommend that your, operating agreement says something about being able to transfer those interests to a trust, or has some kind of contingency for what's going to happen if you become incapacitated or if you pass away, what's going to happen to that interest.
I gotcha. And then, do you do anything? Would it be any different between a long-term rental, short-term rental? I'm talking about like if somebody has an Airbnb or something like that, or is that more of like an insurance question, not necessarily like an asset question?
It goes back to the asset question too. I mean, you obviously want to have
Mhm.
insurance on those properties because, if you're having multiple people stay there throughout the year and they're there for different reasons, a lot of things can go wrong in those properties. But as far as like ownership, yeah, I would want my trust to own those properties. You know,
Mhm.
one for um, probate avoidance, and then if it's an asset protection trust, then for that asset protection too.
Gotcha. Do you have any sort of stories like obstacles that a client brought to you? Some I don't know, big dramatic thing and they brought it to your table. How were you able to help them navigate through that?
Uh, you know, I've been lucky, I guess, in that regard that I haven't had too many like crazy things happen since I've
Mhm.
been doing this full time for the last year and a half or so. I've worked with a few real estate investors who've had, several properties, 15, 20, 25 properties, single families, multifamily units, and they were kind of all over the place with how they were owned. And,
Mm,
um, some of them didn't know exactly who was even on the title because they owned it with partners. So it got a little sloppy and we cleaned it up. So to make sure that their properties were protected, at least, through a lens of going through probate. So that's, like I said, fortunately, I haven't had to do anything super crazy. I'm sure that will, as time goes on, I'll run into that. But so far, knock on wood, I've been lucky.
How do you sort something out like that? So I don't have a bunch of different partnerships out there and a bunch of different homes with a random group of people. But when somebody comes to you with that and they're like, I own all these houses, but I'm not even sure who with, I don't even know how we hold title. What's the process that you go through to sort something like that out?
Yeah, number one, I would if they're owning it, in an LLC, let's get the operating agreement. Number two, let's pull the deed to the property so that we can see exactly what the deed says, because that's obviously very important in a situation like this. And then we figure out, what do you want? What's your goal? What do you want to happen with these properties? Do you want them to be sold on your death? Do you want them to be kept for your family members, for the kids to have them as an investment? So that's really what it boils down to is, let's figure out how it's owned and what your goals
Mhm.
are with it.
Gotcha. Yeah, so let's dive into you as a real estate investor. So that's what I really appreciate about a lot of people who are in our networking group is a lot of the service providers, they also invest in real estate. And so I think that that just kind of gives somebody more of an edge when you're sitting down face to face with somebody, like you're not just talking the talk, you're also walking out the walk. So
Right.
talk to us about what you're involved in.
Yeah, so I part owner. There's myself and two partners. We own a 7-unit building over in Mount Clemens. We've had that for a couple of years now. I'm also a limited partner in a deal out. It was a syndication deal out in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. So I've been part of that for I think 2 or 3 years now as well. And yeah, we're always looking at deals and hoping to find, the next great deal. I know that it's kind of flat right now with some of what's going on with the interest rates and, selling prices, but we're happy with the building we have. We've finally got it stabilized. We bought it from somebody who owned it long term, and there were a lot of problems when we got it. So some evictions, a lot of renovations to the units, but now it's solid, and we're really happy with it.
Okay, well, I'm going to have you walk us through both of those deals in terms of how did you find the property? How did you determine who you were going to partner with, or maybe somebody brought it to you? And then walk us through that stabilization. So we'll start with the 7 unit in Mount Clemens, which I assume is the property you're referring to as you had to stabilize it, evictions, etc.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay,
So
let's start with that one.
yeah, so my partners are two guys that I went to college with. Um, so actually, the one of them I've known since first grade. He's one of my best friends. We're both each other's best man in our weddings. Went to college together, law school together. He's an attorney. The other guy sells he's a pharmaceutical representative, so he sells, medicine. And we were just looking, COVID obviously hit and caused a lot of people to maybe reevaluate what they were doing or where they were going in life. So that's where we decided, there was all the hoopla with like the stocks, GameStop and AMC, and I'm like, yeah, this looks cool, but I don't really want to get involved in that. Like, what's something that I can invest in that, I have more control over. And then the one guy, he was, he was learning about real estate. Like, we should invest in multifamily. So we kind of took a year and got educated, did some networking, some research, and then I think it was like February of 2022. This Mount Clemens property actually was on when it was on the market. It was on Crexy, so put an offer in on it, and it's 7 minutes from my house. Drove over there, kind of walked around, looked at it. It's a nice brick building, and put an offer in on it. The offer got accepted. That was about April of 2022. I think we closed on it in June of 2022. And I think there were 2 vacant units at the time. So we renovated those. And then I think we did 2 evictions, and then 1 person moved out. And, they were full-blown evictions. The stuff was out. The sheriff came, stuff was all out on the front lawn. And yeah,
Drama.
everybody has those stories that people can relate, but
Mm-hmm.
it could have been worse. I guess the units weren't like trash. They were just needed some new flooring and painting and some updating, and we got those updated, and we raised the rents quite a bit. I think they were like around $700 a month when we took them over, and now they're approaching $1,100 a month. So
Oh, nice.
yeah, there was
Fantastic.
some definite raising of the rent, and then just making it more efficient, and how it's been run. And we have, property management taking care of a lot of it. So we're not, 100% in the day to day, but we keep up with the property management and make sure, they're doing what they're supposed to do. So yeah, getting the tenants out, was a process. Obviously, when you have to go through the eviction process, you're dealing with months instead of like weeks or days, and nobody just wanted to move out. They want to stay there as long as they can without paying for the place.
Of
And
course. Mm-hmm.
yeah, so eventually they got out, and yeah, it's been the biggest challenge we've had really is just lately we've had two people move out, and so the market, the rental market, our applications have been down a little bit. People are giving us inquiries, but we haven't found the right tenants yet. So we're still looking, but we have they're 2 nice apartments, 2 bedroom, 1 bath, about 1,000 square feet. So they're in a nice part of Mount Clemens too.
Oh, very good. Yeah, I have a 5 unit in Mount Clemens that my husband is actually going over to today. So we had a problem tenant that we did not have to evict. He left sort of his own will, sort of, after
Sort
about
of.
6 weeks of nudging
Yeah.
politely.
Right.
So my husband teaches high school, and the awesome thing about that is he hires his students to come and do those little maintenance type tasks and the
That's
cleaning.
cool.
So I usually have to clean these units out when we're doing the turnover, but this time he's like, I'll just hire my students. Like, I'll hire my students and they'll come over and we'll clean it out. So that's what they're doing today. And I am just like, thank you. Like,
Yeah.
I do not have to go and clean out these units myself. I'm very grateful for that. But I wanted to point out something that Andy said that really resonates with everything that I try to teach when I'm talking to people who are just getting started, or they've got their foot in the water at least. Is, you said, education, networking, and research. I feel like those are just the 3 core things that a person needs to tap into before they get started or before they jump into their first deal. Is, you need education on the all of the moving parts of whatever strategy that it is you're going to do. And then also, sometimes education can help you to narrow down, what strategy do I even want to do. Networking is super, super key. And then also the research. What is it that you think you received out of your networking experience? Because for me, networking is like everything, but some people don't feel that same way about it.
well, like I say, your network is your net worth, and there's
Hmm.
so many. Um, learning from people what they've gone through with other, flips or other multifamily properties, hearing their stories, getting to share in their experiences, and just people giving you advice. I mean, I can't. I've been to. I can't even count how many real estate or multifamily meetups I've been to, and just the people are so kind with their time and their advice. And sure, there's competition out there, but when you get everybody in a room like that, and they're sharing war stories and telling this is what I would do, this is what you should do next. That's invaluable to me, because real
Hmm.
estate, like you said, there's so many different ways to be involved in real estate, and finding that perfect way for you to be involved takes some trial and error. But when you have people who've been there before and can tell you, well, this worked for me, this didn't, that can really it can shorten your, your time to your destination.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. The people that we have done joint ventures with, the different vendors or service providers, my attorney, my CPA, it seems like every person that I bring into the deal to help me with whatever it is that I need to have done is somebody that I've met personally, either at a networking event in person or virtually, but most people have been in person. Um, and so then I wanted to also touch on what you said about property management. So it's a 7 unit building and you do have property management on it. Now we just self-manage our 5 unit, and then we also have a duplex and we just self-manage those as well. But I have heard some people say, they go back and forth, that you need to be at a certain unit count before property management becomes I guess justifiable in terms of the cash flow, but it does sound like with the rents that you raised, definitely justifiable. So just talk to us about how you guys decided on that. And you don't have to tell us who it
Right.
is that you go through, but just how did you decide, A, we want to use property management, and then B, how did you find the company that you settled with?
Yeah. So, all three of us have full time. Well, at the time, we all had full time W-2s, and we realized that adding managing a 7 unit apartment building may not be the best use of our time with families. We have all have young children, and we're like, okay, we want to buy this property. We want to make sure that it's run right, because we're buying it to fix it up. We're buying it to make it a nice place for people to live. And we just didn't think that even between the three of us, we'd have the time to dedicate to
Mhm.
all the issues that can go wrong. And um, having somebody who's been there before, who does it, who you know does it with other people that we know, that was important to us. The company that we work with, we had done some networking with them before and seen some of the buildings that they manage and what they do. So it gave us peace of mind knowing that they would take care of it for us. And like I said, we're pretty involved with like the property management side of things. We at least emailing with them weekly, probably more than that, probably more than they want us to, especially in the beginning, because we want to make sure things are running smoothly, and
Mhm.
the tenants that our tenants are being taken care of when they have needs. Um, so yeah, that was just kind of like a no-brainer to us. Like, let's have somebody who can do this professionally, so we're not scrambling around and trying to find, vendors or other, it's just good to have it all in one spot. So
Mhm.
that, yeah, to us, that was a no-brainer. But I understand, yeah, some people, they want more control, or that's just not, in the budget with the cash flow. And there's like, that's the good thing about real estate, is there's tons of different ways to be successful and do things.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I just heard Andy mention also is that you all have families, you all have little children. This is an objection a lot of people make is, well, it's just not the right timing in my life personally to jump into real estate investing. I've got my little kids, and so I also just, that's part of like my testimony as well, is you can make it work. And what I'm hearing from you is like, it's not so much how you're making it work, it's who you have in place and your partnerships, not just with your partners, but also your property management company. It sounds like, you've got some good people around you. And when you have that, it doesn't have your family that you have doesn't have to be some sort of anchor holding you back, you can still do these things, make these leaps.
Yeah, I think people make up a lot of stories in their mind about why they can't do something, but
Hmm.
you flip it around and say, well, why can I do this? And there's resources out there to, maybe you don't have the exact cash flow you want because you have somebody managing, but look at all this other time that saves you because you're not at the
Hmm.
top constantly dealing with the issues that arise or creep up.
Yeah, absolutely. That has been definitely a mindset shift my husband and I have gone through in the last few years is valuing time more than money. How can we save time more than how can we save money? That, just having to shift our focus from that for sure. Let's talk about you said you were a limited partner in a building. Where did you say it was located?
It's in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. Okay. Describe the building to us.
It's a 28 unit building, I believe. I haven't been there to see it on site, but I've seen pictures of it. It looks very nice. It's a brick building. Um, we I'm an LP through networking with somebody who came. They brought the deal to me and my two other partners. They're also limited partners in the deal too. So they brought the deal to us, and we like the numbers that they projecting, and it just all looked good, and the building looked nice, and um, we've had, I can't complain. It's been uh, it's been pretty low maintenance. I guess that's the best way to put it. I don't have a lot of like stories about it. They do what they say they're going to do. I know one of the challenges that they were dealing with this past year that hit some of the cash flow was there was a lot of snow in Wisconsin. So I
Mm,
think the snow removal was like 4x what it was the year before, just because of
wow.
how much they were getting. So, um, they have their own challenges. Obviously, it's a little bit different than uh,
Hmm.
some of the challenges you might deal with here in Michigan. We do get snow, but Wisconsin, I guess that area is gets pretty hard hit. So, um, yeah, I don't know. I don't have too many war stories or anything crazy to say about that one. It's just been pretty
Well,
stable for.
that's good. That's
Yeah,
good. The
right.
less drama, the better.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, describe to somebody who's listening who just heard you say that you invested in a property that you've never even seen before. Describe to somebody who's hearing that and just saying like, "What?" Feeling like you would have to walk every single property whether, so we're here in Michigan, whether it was in California or regardless of where it was. Describe to them how you were comfortable enough, how you were able to get into it without ever having to see the building.
Yeah. So the one of the general partners, one of the GPs, we did a lot of like networking with her, like educating with her. She is somebody who works for some kind of commercial real estate company where she does underwriting. So when we were
Okay.
underwriting some of the deals that we were looking at, one of my partners knew her from another mastermind that she was in, and she offered to help us with the underwriting, learn the ins and outs. So she spent a lot of time doing that with us, and we talked about like maybe partnering with her on other deals. Um, Deals that were more local here in Michigan, and then she came to us with this Wisconsin deal, and we knew her, so we knew she was legit and on the up and up. And then her partners, they had a pretty good track record just from the due diligence that we did on them. We felt comfortable being able to put our capital there, and that they would take the right steps to make that grow for us. So I think it's really it's really just like being comfortable. Obviously, there's always risk with any investment that you make, but um, because it goes back to education and networking, knowing what the
Mhm.
numbers mean when you see those, when you get that offering memorandum, and then being comfortable with the people that you're investing with.
Yes. Again, going back to those three core pillars: education, networking, research. So, what do the numbers look like for a limited partner? Like when someone sends you information about it. So, somebody who's just now thinking about multifamily, like what is it that you need to do on your part to determine whether the deal is good or not to you? Like what are the different things you have to review?
I That's a good question. So I would see, what is their goal with the property?
Okay.
Is there room to raise rents? Do they have plans for, um, streamlining operations, you know, because it all boils down to the net operating income really, and you want to make sure that they have a solid team in place that can implement what their strategies are, whether it's, you know, renovating all the units, or if it's just, hey, we need to, you know, raise rents on 10 of the units because they're way under market. I think those are the things that I was looking at is, hey, can they raise rents? Can they make this run more efficiently? And then, of course, like, not numbers, but is this property in a, like, is it in an area that's growing, or is it in a, you know, an area that you feel
Mm-hmm.
comfortable with investing? So all those boxes for me were checked when we did this deal here. So those are the things.
Okay. Do you think that did you formally put together like a list of criteria, or was it just something that you just knew off the top of your head? Because that's something that I think if I were looking at a syndication, like a larger multifamily deal, I feel like maybe one of the first things I would do is I would sit down and I would write a list of these are the things that I would want to see in a deal. So for just for example, I really wouldn't want to invest for appreciation. I would really want to invest in something that's more of like a value add cash flow. That's just my own personal
Yeah.
preference.
Yeah. So that's definitely one way to do it or look at it. It's, you know, it's really what are your goals with
Mhm.
investing in this deal? And um, going back to what I said, I felt comfortable like that they were going to raise the rents. There was room to raise the rents based on what the market showed. Um,
Mhm.
had plans in place to streamline operations, and then I like the operators too. They seemed like they were competent, more than competent. They had a good track record of what they were doing, so I felt comfortable. I'm kind of like a ready, fire, aim guy. You know, I'm like, I want to get into it.
Absolutely. Same. Mhm.
There's a little bit of risk involved. I'm willing to take. I don't want to take a huge
Mhm.
risk necessarily, but if there's a little bit of risk, then hey, that's something I'm willing to do. Uh,
Mhm.
so yeah, it's not. I don't know if there's necessarily like a list that I would make, but just feeling comfortable with, you know, what my gut says.
Yeah, and I think that you mitigated a lot of risk by you knew the people before you jumped into the deal. It wasn't just some random solicitation that hit your inbox one day. And then also that second thing that you mentioned, knowing that the property was in not in a war zone area, like in an area where, everybody was going to be decent, et cetera. So I think you'd mitigate a lot of risk that way. And then, the research that you mentioned that you did on different things like that. No, that's great. So, Andy, you are a real estate investor. You're also an attorney. I'm going to ask you to give two pieces of advice um, to your fellow attorneys out there. All right. So, the first piece of advice that I would ask you to give somebody who's in your space, so an attorney in your space, is so you market and promote yourself and your services through public speaking, which is, I mean, I've known Andy for longer than probably a couple of years, but I just recently, like I said, I just recently noticed like he's getting out there. He's getting out there into meetings and stepping up on platforms. And so, that really made you stand out, I think. So what advice would you give to other attorneys who are thinking about marketing themselves through public speaking, but maybe they just haven't gotten around to it, or maybe they're too nervous? Like, what
I mean,
advice do you have for them?
yeah, that's I'm more like of an introvert, to be honest. Like I'm fine with being to myself and not doing public speaking, but I know that it's important because, that's how you, like I said, going back to educating the public on, estate planning and
Mhm.
what's out there. So I think the best advice is like, if you're nervous about it, if you're scared about it, then it's probably the right thing, and you should be doing that because, those are the things that are going to help you grow and help your
Mhm.
practice grow and get out there. So it might, suck to do it, and you might feel nervous for a week before you do the presentation. I know for my first couple I was, but preparation's key. I would take like 2-3 days before I presented and just run through my presentation like 4 or 5 times each day, time myself,
Mhm.
um, almost basically memorize what I was going to say. And once I got up there, it was just like, you know, presenting it to myself in the mirror again. So, I think, yeah, just take a little bit of risk and, do something that makes you uncomfortable, because that's how you grow.
Yeah, good advice. And I think that if you do that level of preparation, like you mentioned, it really helps to take the edge off. How did you get booked for these presentations, for lack of a better word? Like how did you do you reach out to people? Do people reach out to you? Does it go both ways? Like for example, I reached out to you, but that's because I saw you posting about this was something that you were doing. So how do you get these invitations to come speak?
Yeah, it's been both. Like I said, I've done some webinars, so I did like Facebook ads and just like telling everybody I knew, like, hey, I'm doing a webinar about estate planning. It's, a half hour. Come spend some time with me and I'll give you some free education. I've had other people ask a couple people I just ran into through like networking, like, hey, I'm a realtor and I'm putting on the one I did in March was with a bunch of other people in the real estate space. They wanted to do an estate planning like
Mm,
seminar presentation, and I don't know if it's just right place at the right time. I met the guy at like a trunk or treat, like, whatever, however many months before we did that. And he ended up texting me like a month before the event, like, hey, we're going to put this on. You want to be like the estate planning attorney who speaks? And I was like, yeah, of course.
awesome.
Yeah, it's just been both, like letting people know that I do that. And then, other people have, like I said, right place, right time. So, uh,
Mhm.
yeah, like going back to what I was saying before, like that I was very nervous about doing this for a long time. And I was like, all right, I sat down with myself and I was like, honestly, how are you going to grow your practice? And you can sit behind a computer and you can put stuff on social media all day, and that's fine. That works for some people, but I like to connect with people in person and, um, be able to just so they can see my face, see that I'm a real person, that I'm not a
Mhm.
scumbag, that kind of thing. And I think that's, invaluable for my practice.
Yeah, I think that personal touch is important because you may have a person who needs your services. They may have that need, and they don't know anybody. They don't have any faces. They don't have any names. So they just go to Google and they type in what it is, and then I'm sure hundreds of people in the Metro Detroit area, let alone the Michigan area, would pop up. But if you are up in front of people, you will be top of mind.
Yeah,
I believe, like, if you're getting up and you're speaking in front of people, as soon as that person thinks about or considers, I have this need, I really need to get this done, I need to hire an attorney, they're going to remember you. You will be top of mind. They probably won't even go look for anybody else because they've already, whether they've met you directly, they've already seen you, they've already heard you speak, they've already gotten, like, a
yeah,
vibe for your personality. So I think that's a very valuable thing that you can do for your brand. Not to be cliche and call it your brand, but really you're building your personal brand and your business brand, by getting out there and being a public speaker. I think that's really, really great way to build your business. So the other piece of advice that I had for your fellow attorneys is you're an attorney who invests in real estate. I've interviewed a handful of other attorneys who also invest in real estate, and not all of them are in estate planning. They're maybe in different areas, but um, I just assume that you are incredibly busy. Also, you have a family. So how does somebody who has your workload and then also like your personal life obligations, what would be your advice for somebody who was you maybe 2 years before you pulled the trigger on investing in real estate? You were kicking it around and you were thinking about it. I'm sure you had some objections. How'd you conquer those?
you just for me, just working through it, just
Okay.
deciding, okay, I'm going to do this. And there's some people will have objections. Well, I don't have the money or the time or this. There's always somebody else or something else that you can leverage to, um, you know, you raise money from other people. You hire somebody to be your property manager. So there's all sorts of ways to um, sit down and look at those objections and really just be honest with yourself. Like, is this
Mhm.
something that I can't solve, or is there a way to solve it, but I'm just not doing it right now? So, yeah, I think that you just have to, obviously be honest with yourself. I think that that goes for anything, but it's just a matter of coming up with a plan and sticking to it and following through.
Mhm. Yeah, no, and I like what you said. If there is an area that you can't fulfill, well, who could fulfill that for me? You know, and you've got two other partners and you network with other people, and that might be, square one for people in any profession. It doesn't have to be attorneys, but anybody out there who's thinking about pulling the trigger on real estate investing. I think square one is maybe making a list of everything you can do and then everything you feel like you can't do, and then asking yourself, well, who could come
Right.
in, whether it's an individual or some sort of service provider. No,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I
That's
think
good.
there's a book called Who Not How. So
Yeah. Yep.
people look at.
Yeah. Well, speaking of books, that was going to be my next question for you. Do you have any sort of entrepreneurial business mindset, real estate investing specific book that you would recommend for people?
Yeah, I do. I conveniently have it right next to me. Um, Gap in the Game.
Ooh.
Gap in the Game.
Okay.
That's a huge one because I mean, anytime you have goals and you're working towards those goals, you're making progress. And some days you're sitting there and you're like, geez, I'm like never going to grow this business. I'm never going to get another client again. I'm never going to make another dollar. And then you think, well, look back 6 months ago and where were you then? So staying out of that gap of not having something that you're working towards and then thinking about, all the things you've gained from what you've done. I had a lot of trouble with doing that because you're always chasing after the next best thing. And
Mhm.
what really helped me um, realize that, like, geez, you make so much progress in a month, 3 months, 6 months. It's important to look back. It's important to sit down and, even I think a lot of people have like trouble being proud of themselves because they say, well, I needed to do that anyway. I had to feed my family. I had to pay the bills, but it's okay to sit down and look at what you've accomplished and be happy, be proud that you've done that. And that book's been a big help for me in that sense.
Oh, awesome. I need to put that book in my Amazon cart. I really appreciate those two authors. So it's Dan Sullivan, Dr. Ben Hardy. I have read 10x the 10x is easier than 2x book
Yeah.
by both of those two authors, and then I listen to just about everything that Dan Sullivan puts out on YouTube. I really appreciate their it's like personal development mindset growth, type content where it just gets you to really think about, like you said, it gets you to reflect on everything you've done, and it gets you to really understand like all of the resources that you really do have around you that,
Yeah.
if you were just to put these things together, you really could accomplish what seems so difficult for you. And no, I so connect with what you just said about like, I'm never going to get another client. I'm never going to make another dollar. I was telling Andy before we hopped on the recording that my husband and I closed on the purchase of an investment property yesterday, but it had been a handful of months since our last sale and we hadn't found anything. And the market, as of this recording, is just like so competitive right now for investors. I'm just like, we're never going to find another one. But so I need that book that you just recommended because I need to rewire my brain a little bit in that thinking.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
like exercises to do and
Mhm.
not physical, but like write this down, answer this question, and it's really really a big help for me because I mean
No,
mindset's everything. You can someone can do anything really, but they have to have the mindset to know that they can.
yes. No, absolutely. All right, kind of a goofy question for you. I'm going to ask you not your favorite movie ever, but do you have a movie that you love that sort of reminds you of the entrepreneurial journey? And the plot doesn't have to have anything to do with business or entrepreneurship.
Um, it'd be like cliche to say Rocky. I mean, I'm gonna say Happy Gilmore because the whole time
Okay.
growing up, I always wanted to be a pro hockey player. I love hockey. I've played it my whole life. I made my kids love hockey. Um, and obviously I didn't end up that way. I had to find something else to pay the bills. I didn't have to save my grandma's house from the IRS or anything like that. But um, I found something that I'm good at, and I love working with people and being able to, help them protect their assets, protect what they
Mm-hmm.
love, make sure that their family's taken care of when they can't take care of them. So yeah, I wanted to be a hockey player, but I ended up being a lawyer.
Oh, right on. That's one of my all-time favorite movies, and I've never correlated it to the entrepreneurial journey, but yeah, things definitely took a turn for Happy, and just being an older millennial and pretty much it's second language to all of us to just quote movies. My husband and I quote that movie probably once a week for sure.
My daughter,
Constantly.
my daughter's 12 and she watched it for the first time a few weeks ago.
Mhm.
She was laughing pretty good. So
Oh, good, good. It's good to know that it still hits with this next generation and we're not just super old. Good.
yeah.
Good deal. Yeah, so one last question for you, Andy, before we let you go. If people want to reach out to you to talk to you either about your investments or your services, how can people connect with you?
Yeah, I'd love to talk to people about any of that. So they can my website is katalaw.com, Kata law.com. You can find me on Facebook, Kata Law PLLC. If they want to give me a phone call, my business number is 248-206-5905. Or they can text me on that number too, or they can email me. It's just my first name, Andy@katalaw.com. I'm pretty
Awesome.
requested, so you reach out.
Awesome.
I'll reach out back.
For sure. And I wrote some of that stuff down. I'm going to plug that in wherever it is that you're watching this. You guys, you know where to go to look for information, comments, description, the post. We'll put your website and we'll put your Facebook out there as well. All right. Well, thank you, Sarah. This has been a great, great conversation. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks everybody for watching. Everybody take care.
Bye.
And for all of you out there in internet land, I have 2 directions for you to follow. Number 1, always remember there is no spoon. And number 2, remember to join us for weeknight workshop. We're going live on YouTube on Monday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to teach you all of the strategies and systems that we've used to build our 6-figure real estate investing business. We were 2 broke teachers who broke into the real estate investing space, and if we can do it, you can do it. And you do not want to miss this information. So join us on YouTube Monday nights, 7 p.m. Eastern. We'll see you guys in the workshop.